Hi, I'm Professor Alan Peterson, and I teach 3D design at Kennesaw State University. So today, I'm going to make a demonstration for you on how to, we'll sculpt a figurine, we'll make a rubber mold of it that we can pour pewter into, which is a low temperature melting point metal. So by the end of the day, we'll have a metal figurine that looks exactly like the one that I will sculpt in this oil-based clay called Plasticine. So those are the basic steps that we'll go through. I'll sculpt the figurine, we'll make a mold of it, we'll pour the metal into the mold, and then voila, there's our metal figure. So I brought the camera into my own studio today. So if you hear things in the background, that's just other people working. There's a lot of artists here at South River Art Studios. So first, let's just start sculpting, and then I'll lead you into the mold making process after that. So, this, as I mentioned, this clay that I've got is called Plasticine. It's oil-based so that it never dries out. And let's see, I'm just gonna start. I've got some clay tools here that I can shape the details with. I'll give you a closer look at what I'm doing. So I've got a few different kinds of plasticine all mixed in, a few different colors. This stuff never dries out, so, I've got off-white plasticine, some tan plasticine, some brown plasticine, all mixed together here. But that won't matter. The different colors, they'll all look the same when we, once we get the mold made and the metal casting done. So, sculpting out some arms and legs. Here, I'll make it a little smaller. So we want to make sure that it fits inside this box called a flask. And it looks good, we've got that. Good, just checking. Maybe I'll take its head off for a second so that I can get the arms and legs right. Looks like I'm getting a little bit of a long arm over here. I'll take that. That's a little better. So, got the basic shape. Now I have to decide, what kind of figure do I want to make? What sort of person am I making here? So, I'm leaning towards, for my figurine, leaning towards a bird-like person. Maybe an owl-like version of a bird person. An adventurer, if you will. Let's see. So, I've got some thumbs. But since it's a bird person, I'll give it feathers. Not wings exactly. Well, I'll say it can't fly, but I'll give it some feathers nonetheless. I'm gonna keep it simple. I don't think I'll overdo it there. And, you know, I'm not too concerned about going into great detail for now. Just the suggestion of feathers. Oops, that arm's falling apart. There. There. You can see the texture. I'm building up some texture here. Now maybe I'll give it fingers. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll give it more feathers over on this side. Get the left wing fully feathered. So I've got some wing feathers on there. I'm going to give it some tail feathers now. I'll just lay in a few. Put them in there side by side. And right now, you know, the first few aren't going to look like much, but then they'll add up to become a texture. Here's my thrift store butter knife. Like I said, anything can be a clay tool. I'll just keep on adding some more of these tail feathers. Maybe I'll smooth them in with this. This tool's an old dentist tool. A dentist's tool that I got at the flea market. This may be the fanciest one I've got. Mostly, I picked up things like chopsticks after eating sushi or a regular butter knife. You know, it's not so much getting a bunch of fancy tools as what you do with them. So here, I'm helping those tail feathers to stick out a little bit. Maybe I'll put a roll of, just a little bit of this plasticine back underneath there to help the tail feathers stand out a bit. There, that's pretty good. And maybe I'll use this knife, this clay tool, to create some more feather texture in between the big ones that I've sculpted. Yeah, it just adds a little bit. There, just setting up some texture. All right, now let's take a look at the feet. Sculpting out some bird feet here. I'm gonna give it bird legs. Let's see if it'll stand up. Not bad, not bad. I'll take a second and work on the head some. Let's see, a little smaller. That might work for an owl head. Let's see about a beak. We'll give it some eyes. And if you've never sculpted like this before, that's okay. If you're good at drawing, you know, all those skills work towards sculpture too. Sculpture is just, you know, it's a lot like drawing in that each little gesture I make with this tool leaves a mark. It's different, of course, because this is in 3D, but all your drawing skills do translate. All right, I think that's pretty good for now. Let's stick it on the body. It's a pretty believable owl head. So I've got a piece of wire. Maybe I'll use that to help anchor the head. So we'll stick it down into the body, kind of like a neck. And that helps to stick it on there. Not bad. This head looks a little bit like a pumpkin. I'm gonna make it more feathery now that it's on the body. All right, that's pretty good. That's believable. Here's a little bit of wire that's stuck out the side. I'll cover it up with a little patch. Nobody will ever know. You won't tell. Nobody will see it. Now, you see the crack between the head and the body? I'm just going to fill it up a little bit. Owls aren't famous for having skinny necks. I'll thicken this up. So, I also went and picked out this stick, thinking maybe it would be good as a staff. It's way too big, but let me see. Maybe our adventurer could hold it right there. And if so, I would cut it right about here. Oh, those are just wire cutters. I'm surprised they worked so well on that stick. Okay, would you like to hold this? Like a staff, of course. And that'll also, if I can stick it firmly in his grasp, that will also help the figure stand up. I'll have three feet, kind of, if that staff will work as one. Tell you what, I'll have to put a little bit of plasticine on the staff, right where he wants to hold it, to help it all stick. That'll just help stick the hand. Put the thumb up there. All right, maybe I'll give it a pouch, a belt of sorts, a shoulder slung sack. So instead of making a strap and adding it, I'm going to create it by carving away around the strap, subtracting. Maybe I will add some too, you know? There's the strap. And here's the bag. A bag of things for casting spells, maybe. And here on the back, instead of carving, I'll go ahead and I'll add the strap. So that it can lay over all that feather texture. And here I'll just tuck it into the neck. And I'll make it meet up with the other side. All right. Put that arm down by its side some. Oops, lost a feather. All right. Pretty happy. So I'll stand it up. I'll make a base for it. And we'll need a base anyway, because this base will end up being the funnel of sorts that we'll pour metal into. Here, I'll bring a flatter surface in, this metal bar. So we'll stand it on the base like this. And I've got a little bit of wire again. I'll twist it up. Might be nice and strong. Okay, we'll stick this in here. It's down to ground level. I'm going to cut this off. so it doesn't go too far up in the leg here. There, that's pretty stable. I'm gonna put another section of stick in there just to help hold this up. Just like that. Maybe I'll stick the stick with a little bit of plasticine. I'll just do a few last minute touch-ups here. I can see the wire. I want to cover that up. I'm going to attach the stick to the base just for stability. I'll cut it loose later, but in the metal. But for now, I want to stick it to it. Look at the back and stand it up. All right. Just about got it sculpted. Put the finishing touches on it. These bird legs. Make sure we got the tail feathers. I'm happy. So now let's take a look. I've made this container called a flask. We'll fit it around. I'm gonna adjust it just a little bit, narrow the shoulders a bit to fit in there. And there we go. So I've made this flask so that it will fit with this clamp that I have. You could use a rubber band, or you could use something else to hold the flask together. Doesn't have to be a clamp like that, but that's just the clamp that I've got, and it is important to hold it all together because we're going to pour rubber mold in there. I'll show you that in a second. Before I take it any farther, I'm going to seal the bottom edge of this container so that the rubber mold doesn't leak out when I start to put it in there. So you can seal it with tape if you get it really good. I'm going to use a scrap of wax that I've got and this torch to melt the wax. So I'm going to heat up my butter knife. And you don't have to do this. You could use tape to seal it, but since I'm in my studio and I've got some wax, that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm heating up the knife, using that to heat up the wax. And the wax flows into the crack there and provides a seal. I'll show you close up what I'm doing here. So here's that piece of wax. And I've got the knife hot. Did you see it? It'll come out from the other side. Got the wax. I'll put it on there. The knife is hot enough that when the wax melts, it just flows, it rolls down the knife into that crack along the bottom. Okay, so I've sealed all the way around the bottom of the flask, as we call that container, with wax. And I also went and took a little bit of extra wax and did the same thing for the sides, because we want to make sure that it's not going to leak when we pour the rubber mold in there. And you'll see what I mean in just a second, because we're going to mix this stuff up. It's a liquid. It's going to flow into all the details of that figurine that we just sculpted, and then it's going to harden up so that it's rubbery, kind of like a pencil eraser. You don't have to use any one specific product to do this kind of rubber mold. I've got a rubber mold that's called Mold Star 16, but there are various different kinds of rubber mold, and you can Google it, you can look it up, and select for yourself. But just make sure that you get not just any rubber mold, but one that is designed to take the heat of pewter. Pewter is a low melting point metal. It melts at about 400 degrees. Or thereabouts, high 300s or so. So this is designed to take the heat of pewter, so it'll work great for what we're gonna do. I've got my safety glasses on because I don't want to get any of this in my eye. So here we go. Again, I'm using this particular product, but if you use this, great. If something else, whatever you use, just make sure that you follow the instructions, because every rubber mold is going to have maybe slightly different instructions on how to mix it up properly. Most of them, they all tend to involve a part A and a part B. So, once they get mixed, then they start to react and harden. So this kind is easy to remember. It's equal parts A and B. So I've got 2 cups oh wait, don't forget, you've got to mix it up first. So I'm going to stir, oh, it's so full. Yeah, scrape the bottom, scrape the sides, stir it up. Yeah, let me see if I can. I'll let that drain just a little bit, and I'll get another stirring stick to stir this one. So you want to scrape the bottom, scrape the sides. There's going to be a little bit of sediment on the bottom, or there's likely to. So you want to just scrape that up and stir it in. Good. Just letting those, letting those drip into the containers so we're not wasting any. All right, I'm gonna put these off to the side. And you notice I got a separate stirring stick for part B. That's because you don't want to mix any of part B into part A. If you get some of one in the other container, that's going to start the set, and you've ruined the whole container, or you better use it right then. So I don't want to do that, so I'm keeping them separate for now. We'll mix them in just a second. So I've got just a little bit of part A in here, and I'm judging. I'd rather have just a little bit more than I need than not enough. That's probably plenty. So the reason that I'm using these clear cups, they're exactly the same size, and I can see right through them so that I can be sure that I've got exactly the same amount. You could also use mixing cups. I like these because they're cheap and I can throw them out once I'm, once I've mixed a bunch of this rubber mold. Okay, so you can see, got also a little bit in here. So I'm just looking at the side and I think that's even. Maybe there's a little bit more of the part A. You do want to follow the directions as exactly as possible, because if you get the proportions a little bit off, it could spoil the batch. Okay, this stuff isn't exactly cheap, you know. It's you wanna get it right. You don't want to waste any. It's not, not so expensive, but you want to use what we've got. All right, so like I mentioned, when one of them touches the other, that starts the clock. So I bumped them up together. That's not really affecting what's in the cups here, but about time we started. So I'm gonna triple check. I do believe that's just about equal in there. So I'm going to pour one into the other one. And now it's started. So again, read the instructions on whatever products you select, and that'll tell you how much time you have once you start mixing before that rubber mold sets. You'll have a work time and a cure time. Work time is how long do I have to stir it and pour it to work with it before it is so thickened up that that I can't work with it anymore. So take a look at this. You see, I mixed the white into the blue. Now I stirred it up just to make sure that I got everything in there, though. I'm gonna scrape the sides and scrape the bottom again to get all of this container back into the first one. Why am I doing that? Because I know I can't guarantee that I've scraped all the way down to the bottom and stirred it, I can't guarantee that that first mix was enough to stir it up. So, cleaning out the one, and I can see I'm scraping the sides, scraping the bottom. And here we go. So now I can kind of see, I don't know if you can see it in there, but there are blue and white stripes in the mix. That tells me that it's not fully mixed. So, scraping the sides, scraping the bottoms, and mixing it all up so that it's not stripy blue and white, but just light blue. Turquoise, you could almost call it. Something. Okay, so one reason I picked this product is because it has a fast work time. It even says it. Old Star 16, fast. So I've only got about 5 minutes once we mix them together. Once that first drop hit, I've only got about 5 minutes before it's not workable anymore. So I should stop talking about it and pour. So I'm going to give a thin drizzle. Matter of fact, come on in for a closer look. All right, can you see? Here's our flask with our owl figure. And here's what I just mixed. I'm gonna pour, not from too close, I'm gonna pour from high up. Why is that? Do you see the bubbles in there? If you pour from high up, you can make a thin ribbon of rubber mold. And the thinner that ribbon is, watch the bubbles break as they go over the edge. So they pop themselves. Now look where I'm putting it. I'm trickling it over the head of that figure. So it coats from the top down. A drizzle, if you will. So again, I'm using this thin ribbon to drizzle over the figure that I made, rather than pouring it fast, because that thin ribbon of rubber mold helps to pop the bubbles. You can imagine that thin ribbon that is flowing from the cup down into the container. It's too thin for a bubble. There went one. Did you see it pop? So, there it is. So, now that we've filled up both of these containers, we just wait. And the instructions say 30-minute cure time. So, we'll wait. All right, it's been half an hour and the molds are set. So, take a look. What used to be runny is now rubbery. So, let's take a look at this. I'm gonna have to break the wax seal, just like that. Now, I'll pry the two pieces apart. The wax is still sticking them, which is good. We wanted the wax to keep this runny rubber mold from leaking out. And it did that. Now, we'll just open it up. It's stuck a little bit on the bottom here, so I'm going to use an X-Acto knife. And be careful, this is really sharp. So I'm running around the outside with the sharp blade. Here we go. Maybe I'll get it apart this time. There's one half. That's where it was sticking. And there's the other half. So, I'm gonna mark it. I'm gonna mark it with an X, so I know which side is which. I'll even mark it with this side up. You see it? So we know how it goes back together again. So now, I'll mark this one too. Let my pen go. I'll mark this one with an O. And to this side up. So, our next step is going to be cutting apart the rubber mold with this X-Acto knife. We've got to cut it into two parts so that we can get that figurine out of there that we sculpted in Plasticine. So, with one hand, I'm gonna pull the two halves apart just a little bit, and with the other hand, I'll come in with the X-Acto knife. So, that's the bottom of the figurine. It'll be the top of the mold when we pour it. So I'm going to hold this open and then come in with the X-Acto knife. And I'm gonna make lots of small cuts. all the way down to the bottom. So far, so good. We can pluck this out. I'll turn it over and do the same thing on the other side. Can you see it? And I'm trying to, with this hand, I'm trying to keep pressure on the mold just to get it out of my own way, you know? I don't want to, because it'll spring back, and I don't want it to get sliced up. I want to make one clean cut, not a bunch of little cuts. Okay, so look at all these plasticine. These are tail feathers, these are other feathers, all the texture I made. So I'm just gonna clean those out. Here's some fingers. Here's the beak. And you can see all of the details that we made are reproduced in negative. So we've got to get this staff out of there and the arm. I'll make a separate cut for that. Okay, now we've got all the big pieces out, and we can just pluck out the little ones. So the pattern is just okay now, the pattern's not completely destroyed, but you can see it's come apart in many pieces. That's what we call the original model that we want to duplicate with the mold. It's called the pattern. So I'll just take a little bit of plasticine here and see if I can use it to stick to these little bits and help them, almost like an eraser, help blot them out of there, extract them. I don't know whether I really want to take this out. Oh, I did. There. Okay. So now I've got the mold cleaned out, pretty much, there. Now, to get it ready to pour metal, I'm going to put some talcum powder, some talc, and I'll brush it around in there. This is to help prevent surface tension from getting in the way of filling up the surface texture. So I don't want any pockets of powdery talc in there, but I do want to coat all the surfaces where the metal will go later. So you can see, I'll show you how the two mold halves, or the two mold components work. This blue rubber mold is flexible, and because it flowed as a liquid, flowed into all of the details, it is preserving the surface texture really accurately with a great degree of detail. But it's flexible, you see it? So it's not going to be a very effective container for pouring a liquid into when we melt the metal. So that's what this is called, the mother mold. And when we assemble it like this and like that, just the way it was, That holds it rigid, and we can clamp it just like this. This gives us the benefits of the flexible mold right there on the detail surface where the metal will be touching the mold and shaped by the mold. And it gives us the benefits of the rigid shell here to hold everything in place so that it's clampable in the first place. Can you imagine if we tried to clamp this mold to hold it shut without that? It would squish all over the place. Okay. So now I'm ready to melt the pewter and put it in the mold. I've got my safety glasses back on because that's really important when you're handling molten metal. But as metals go, pewter is pretty low temperature of a melting point. So I've got a few ingots of pewter. That's what we call a bar of pewter. Some of them are shaped kind of like Rolo candy. And sometimes they come in a bar like this. I probably won't melt this. We don't need it all, but I'll put 2 of the small ones in. I've got a propane tank here, a handheld. This is like what you would use for plumbing, or you can also use the green canister like a camping stove. So the container that I'm going to melt the metal in is a stainless steel pot. It used to be like a milk steamer from a coffee machine. So I've got the propane on, and I'm just going to direct the flame towards the metal for a while. So I said that pewter is a low melting point metal. The melting point, depending on the alloy, is going to be just about 400 degrees, approximately. So for a little context, 400 degrees is about the temperature that you would bake a cake at, or bake bread maybe. So it's still hot. You could still burn your hands on that, so you want to be really careful. That's why I'm not touching the pot itself, but holding it by the handle. That's, it's not so hot compared to the way other metals melt. Like, for instance, aluminum melts at about 1,250 degrees Fahrenheit. Bronze melts at about 1,750 Fahrenheit. Iron melts maybe 2,400 or 2,500, depending on the alloy. And we aim to pour it hotter than that. So it flows nicely. Well, the metal here is starting to melt already. So come a little bit closer and I'll show you what's happening in the pot. All right, maybe you can see down in there. Can you see that the metal's starting to melt and liquefy and puddle in the bottom there? So I'm just going to keep the flame moving around. So you might be able to see it's about halfway melted. If not, that's okay. I'll keep on going. So this is pretty quick and pretty easy compared to the furnace setup that we would use if we were melting like iron for sculpture or bronze. This is pretty straightforward. You could do this, you could do this at home with a little practice. So I've got one last bit of metal that's solid. Oh, and there it goes. Now it's liquid. Tell you what, Brock, would you just pick it up? Yeah, would you? Thanks so much. There, can you see that it's liquid now? So now I'm going to put this torch to the side. I've got a skimmer here. I'm using it to push away any floating debris that might be on top. And here, I'll give it one more goose of heat. And done. Now I'll pour it right into the hole in the top of the mold, and here we go. Done. Now I've got a mold here for taking the extra, and you'll see it makes an ingot very much like the one that we melted just a second ago. It'll solidify in a few moments, and so will the metal that's making our figurine here, and then we'll take it out of the mold. Okay, so we've given it a few moments to cool. It's still hot to the touch, but not blistering hot. So let's open up the mold. Here we go. Look at that, the metal has solidified. And there's our figurine. I'm gonna take some pliers and dunk it in water. Got this cup of clean water, just to bring the temperature down a little bit, so it's not warm to the touch, but comfortable to handle. Yeah, take a look. It's got all the details that we sculpted, only now it's metal. How about that? But you notice it's also got this extra clump of metal on the bottom, right? Because we stuck that glob of plasticine there. That was the funnel that we poured the metal into, that directed it into the mold cavity that formed this owl adventurer figurine. So that's not really part of the figure. So we're gonna cut it off. I can probably cut this. I just cut the staff with some wire cutters, these clippers. You see it? I probably can't cut through this with the clippers. It's too big. So what I've got is a hacksaw blade. You can get these for just a few dollars at the hardware store. So here's what I'll do. This makes it pretty easy to cut through metal. Now that I've got it mostly cut, I'm going to wiggle it to break it off. So our figure stands, but I'm going to take this file and use it to smooth out the bottom just a little bit. I think maybe I can make it stand a little bit flatter. Maybe I'll do it this way. So a file is another thing from the hardware store. You know, it just makes metal go away, smooths it out just a little bit. There. So now there's one last trick I would like to show you, and that is I've got some black spray paint. So I'm going to spray it black and then wipe it off before the paint has a chance to dry. Here, I'll do that right here. So the reason that I'm doing this is not because I really want the figurine to stay black. I'm wiping it right back off again because I want to show the shiny metal. But what's happening is the paint goes down into the details and crevices. Well, it coats everything, right? But when I wipe it back off again, I wipe the paint off of the high points and leave it in the crevices. So that really makes more contrast between the high points and the low points. And as we say in 3D design, it enhances the actual texture that you can feel with some visual texture, which is just lights and darks that you can see. Okay, I'll give you a closer look at the new contrast. There it is. There's our owl figure, our bird adventurer. So there you go. Our figurine's done. You could make anything you like using these same steps. It's pretty straightforward, and I teach this process in my 3D design class at Kennesaw. You could do this on your own. You could learn how to cast pewter and make, wouldn't have to be a figurine. You could make a tiny little sculpture that looks like anything. Hope you enjoyed the demonstration, and hope to see you at Kennesaw.